Welcome back to Fiction Flux. Today we're starting a brand new fanfiction. What if Deku was secretly the strongest from birth? Let's not waste time and get started. Izuku Midoriya was born crying. Not because he was weak, but because he was holding back. The hospital room lights flickered the moment he opened his eyes. Machines malfunctioned. Glass trembled. Reality itself reacted to his existence. His mother, Izuku Midoriya, didn't notice. The doctors didn't notice. No one did. Because the moment it happened, it stopped, like it never existed. Like something inside him had already decided to hide. Years later, Izuku stood in front of the Quirk assessment doctor. The words echoed in his mind. "I'm sorry, your son is quirkless." Quirkless, the word that defined his childhood. The word that destroyed his confidence. The word that made everyone see him as nothing. Izuku lowered his head. "I understand." But deep inside, something else responded. Not anger, not sadness, awareness, because the truth was, he wasn't quirkless. His power was simply waiting. Watching, sleeping. Bakugo slammed him against the wall later that day. "You're useless, Deku." Izuku didn't fight back. He never did. Because he didn't need to. Bakugo's hand trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from instinct. Something inside him knew. This boy wasn't weak. This boy was dangerous. Bakugo stepped back. Confused. What the hell? Izuku didn't notice. Because his power wasn't protecting him. It was suppressing itself. For him, one day everything changed. A villain attacked. A giant creature made of pure destruction. People screamed, ran, panicked. Izuku stood frozen. Not from fear. From recognition. His heart beat slowly. Calmly. Because deep down, he knew something no one else did. The villain wasn't stronger than him. Not even close. His fingers twitched. And for a split second, the air bent. The villain froze. Time hesitated. Reality listened. Then, it stopped. Everything returned to normal. Izuku blinked. What was that? He didn't know. But something inside him did. Something ancient. Something limitless. Something that had been waiting his entire life. Waiting for him to realize the truth. He was never weak. He was never quirkless. He was never normal. He was simply holding back. And the moment he stopped holding back, the world itself would no longer be able to contain him. Izuku tried to forget it happened. He told himself it was his imagination. A trick of fear. A coincidence. Because the alternative was impossible. He was quirkless. He had always been quirkless. That's what everyone said. That's what the world believed. So it had to be true. Right, but strange things kept happening. Small things. Unnoticeable things. Things no one else questioned. When he tripped, he never hit the ground. Something slowed his fall. When objects fell toward him, they missed, barely, like reality adjusted itself. Like the world refused to hurt him. Izuku noticed, but he didn't understand. Not yet. Then came the day that changed everything. The sludge villain attack. The same moment that would define his future. Bakugo was trapped. Screaming, suffocating, dying. Heroes stood frozen. Unable to act. Too slow. Too weak. Too late. Izuku watched. His heart pounded. His mind screamed. Move. Move. His legs ran before he could think. His body moved before he could decide. He charged straight toward the villain. Not because he was brave, because something inside him refused to let him stand still. The villain turned toward him, laughing, mocking. "You think you can save him?" Izuku froze. Not from fear, from clarity. Because for the first time, he saw it, not with his eyes, but with something deeper. He saw weakness. He saw flaws. He saw how fragile everything was, including the villain. His hand moved forward, instinctively, and reality responded. The sludge villain stopped moving. Not restrained, not attacked. Stopped, like existence itself paused. For him, for 1 second, the strongest villain in front of him was powerless. All Might arrived, destroyed the villain instantly. Saved Bakugo. Saved everyone. Saved the day. But Izuku knew the truth. All Might didn't create that opening. He did. Later, All Might stood in front of him, watching him carefully. Not smiling, not laughing, studying. Young Midoriya. Izuku looked up nervously. "Why, yes." All Might's eyes narrowed slightly. "What did you do?" Izuku froze. "I didn't." But the words died in his throat, because he wasn't sure anymore. All Might stepped closer, his voice quiet, serious. "I felt it." Izuku's heart skipped. Felt what? All Might stared directly into his eyes. For a moment, he paused. "Everything obeyed you." Silent, heavy, dangerous, real. Izuku didn't know how to respond. Because deep down, he had felt it too. And that terrified him more than anything. Because if it was real, then he had been lying his entire life. Not to others, but to himself. He wasn't quirkless. He wasn't weak. He wasn't normal. He was something else. Something hidden. Something the world wasn't ready for. And something inside him was finally starting to wake up. Izuku couldn't stop thinking about All Might's words. "Everything obeyed you." It replayed in his mind again and again. He sat alone in his room, staring at his hands. They looked normal, weak, harmless, but they didn't feel harmless anymore. "What am I?" he whispered. The air around his fingers shimmered faintly. Just for a second. Then it stopped, like it was hiding, like it didn't want to be seen yet. The next day at school, nothing felt the same. Bakugo walked past him, stopped, turned back. "Oi, Deku." Izuku froze. Bakugo stared at him. Not with anger, not with superiority, with suspicion. When that villain attacked, he hesitated. "What did you do?" Izuku shook his head. "I don't know." Bakugo clenched his fists. It felt like everything froze. Izuku's heart stopped. Bakugo shouldn't have noticed. No one should have noticed. And yet, he did. Bakugo stepped closer. It was like the world stopped moving. His voice dropped. "Except you." Silent, heavy, unavoidable. For the first time in their lives, Bakugo wasn't looking down on him. He was looking at him carefully, cautiously, like he wasn't sure what Deku really was anymore. Days passed, and the feeling grew stronger. Izuku began noticing things he never had before. People's movements felt predictable. Objects felt fragile. Reality felt thin. Like glass. Like something that could break if he pushed too hard. He didn't push. He was afraid to. Because deep down, he knew, if he stopped holding back, there would be no going back. Then came the entrance exam. UA High School. His dream. His future. His test. Robots attacked everywhere. Students fought desperately. Explosions. Ice. Fire. Chaos. Izuku ran. Dodged. Survived. But he wasn't winning. He wasn't scoring points. He was still the weak Deku everyone knew. Until he saw her. Ochako Uraraka. Trapped and pinned beneath falling rubble. The massive zero-pointer towering over her. She couldn't move. She couldn't escape. She was going to die. Izuku's body froze. His heart pounded. Not from fear. From instinct. The same instinct he felt that day. The same instinct he had suppressed his entire life. His mind screamed one word. Move. Reality obeyed. The air cracked. Time slowed. The falling rubble stopped midair. The giant robot froze. Everything froze. Except him. Izuku stepped forward slowly. Not surprised. Not confused. Certain. Because deep down, he had always known. He reached out his hand. Not to push. Not to strike. To allow. The robot collapsed instantly. Not destroyed. Not attacked. Allowed to fall. Allowed to fail. Ochako stared at him. Her eyes wide. Midoriya. He didn't answer. Because in that moment, he realized the truth. He wasn't becoming stronger. He was remembering. Remembering the power he was born with. The power he had hidden. The power that made him the strongest from the very beginning. And somewhere deep inside him, something smiled, because the world's strongest hero had finally started to wake up. Ochako couldn't stop staring at him. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. You saved me. Izuku stood frozen. Not from exhaustion. Not from fear. From realization. Because he hadn't used strength. He hadn't used speed. He had simply decided, and reality had listened. The exam ended soon after. Students celebrated, laughed, talked excitedly about their victories. Izuku stayed quiet, watching his hands, feeling something new, something growing. Not violently, not dangerously, naturally, like a muscle he had never used before. Now waking up, now remembering its purpose. Far away inside UA's observation room. Teachers watched the footage. Silence filled the room. Nezu leaned forward. Interesting. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. He didn't punch it. Present Mike spoke nervously. Then how did it collapse? All Might said nothing. Because he knew. He had felt it before. That same pressure. That same authority. That same impossible presence. He whispered quietly. He allowed it to fall. Everyone looked at him. Confused. Concerned. Afraid. Because that wasn't strength. That wasn't a quirk they understood. That was something else entirely. Days later, the acceptance letter arrived. Izuku opened it slowly. Carefully, his hands trembling. You have been accepted into UA High School. He smiled. This was his dream. This was everything he ever wanted. But deep down, he knew UA wasn't where his journey began. It was where the world would finally discover him. His first day at UA felt different. Not exciting. Not nervous. Heavy. Like something was waiting. Class 1A sat inside. Students talking. Laughing. Living normally. Until he stepped inside. And the air changed. Not visibly. Not obviously. But undeniably. Everyone felt it. Bakugo stopped talking. His eyes locking onto Izuku instantly. Deku. No anger. No mocking. Just awareness. Todoroki watched him carefully. like analyzing something beyond logic. Ochako smiled, relieved, safe, like his presence alone protected her. Aizawa entered the room, sleeping bag dragging behind him. "Sit down." Izuku sat, quietly, normally, like nothing was wrong, like nothing had changed. But Aizawa knew. All Might knew. And deep down, Izuku was beginning to know too. His power wasn't growing. It wasn't evolving. It wasn't awakening. It had always been there. From the moment he was born. From the moment he first opened his eyes. The strongest power didn't belong to someone who could destroy the world. It belonged to someone the world itself obeyed. And Izuku Midoriya had been that person all along. He just didn't remember. Until now, the days at UA should have felt normal. They didn't. Not anymore. Izuku sat at his desk, listening to the quiet hum of the classroom. Conversations happened around him, laughter, arguments, life. But underneath it all, he felt it. The world, not physically, but something deeper. Like he was connected to everything. Every movement, every breath, every possibility. And it was waiting for him. Aizawa suddenly stood up. Combat training outside. Students cheered. Bakugo smirked. Finally, something normal. Something familiar. But Izuku felt uneasy. Because every time he stepped into danger, something inside him responded. Something he couldn't control. Something that didn't ask permission. Training began. Students paired off. Explosions echoed. Ice shattered across the field. Power filled the air. Izuku stood still. Watching, feeling, understanding. Because for the first time, he could see it. Not with his eyes, but with his existence. He could see weakness. Not in people. In reality itself. Everything had limits. Everything had flaws. Everything, except him. Bakugo stepped forward. "Fight me." Izuku froze. "Why?" Bakugo's eyes burned with determination. "Because I need to know." "Know what?" Izuku didn't ask. Because deep down, he already understood. Bakugo attacked instantly. Explosions roared toward him. Fast, violent, deadly. Izuku didn't move. Didn't dodge. Didn't defend. Because he didn't need to. The explosion stopped. Right in front of his face. Frozen. Silent. Impossible. Bakugo's eyes widened. What? He pushed harder. More explosions. More power. More force. Nothing touched him. Reality refused. Because reality knew. He was its master. The entire training field fell silent. Students stared. Unable to understand. Unable to accept. Aizawa stood slowly. His eyes wide. Midoriya. Izuku looked at his hand. Confused. "I didn't do anything." But that wasn't true. He had. He existed. And that was enough. Far away, something else noticed. Not human. Not villain. Not hero. Something older. Something beyond quirks. It felt him. The imbalance. The anomaly. The one existence that didn't follow rules. The one existence that could rewrite them. And for the first time, it responded. Back at UA, Izuku felt it. A pressure, not attacking him. Watching him. Measuring him. Judging him. His heart slowed. Not from fear. From recognition. Because whatever was watching him wasn't surprised he existed. It had been waiting. Waiting for him to wake up. Waiting for him to remember who he really was. Because Izuku Midoriya wasn't born with the strongest quirk. He was born beyond quirks. And the moment he fully awakened, the world itself would stop being his home. It would become his creation. Izuku couldn't breathe. Not because he was suffocating, but because something had finally noticed him. Not a person, not a villain, something else, something vast, something ancient. It wasn't in front of him. It wasn't behind him. It was everywhere, watching, waiting. He stood alone on the training field long after everyone left. The air felt heavier. Different. "What do you want?" he whispered. Silence answered, but he felt it. A response without words. A presence without form. It wasn't attacking him. It was observing him. Like he was something rare. Something impossible. Something that wasn't supposed to exist. Inside the classroom, Bakugo sat quietly. For once, he wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't mocking Deku. He was thinking. Because explosions didn't stop. Power didn't freeze. Reality didn't obey. Not unless something was stronger than it. He clenched his fists. "What are you, Deku? Not weak. Not useless. Never was." He realized that now. Maybe he had always known. Maybe that's why he hated him. Because deep down, he was afraid. That night, Izuku stood in front of the mirror again. But this time, the mirror didn't reflect him immediately. It lagged, just for a second. His reflection moved after him. Not with him. After him. His heart stopped. That's impossible. He touched the glass. The reflection touched him back. But it wasn't identical. Its eyes weren't confused. Its eyes weren't afraid. Its eyes knew. And then, it smiled. Izuku stumbled back. His breathing uneven. Because he hadn't smiled. Something inside him had. Something deeper. Something older. Something that had been sleeping since the day he was born. Memories that weren't his flashed through his mind. Endless space. Silent darkness. Creation. Destruction. Worlds forming. Worlds ending. Reality bending. Existence obeying. Not a quirk. Not power. Authority. His authority. He fell to his knees. No, his entire life had been a lie. He wasn't born into this world. He was placed into it. Hidden, sealed, contained, for a reason. Because if he ever fully awakened, nothing would be above him. Not heroes, not villains, not reality itself. Far away, All Might woke suddenly. His heart racing. He felt it. That same pressure again. But stronger. Much stronger. It's Midoriya. For the first time in years. The symbol of peace felt fear. Not because Izuku was evil. But because he wasn't human anymore. Not completely. Maybe he never was. Back in his room, Izuku slowly stood. His reflection was normal again. Silent. Harmless. But he knew the truth now. It wasn't gone. It was waiting. Waiting for him to accept it. Waiting for him to remember everything. Because Izuku Midoriya wasn't becoming the strongest. He had always been. He had just been pretending to be weak. And the moment he stopped pretending, nothing in existence would be able to stop him. Izuku stopped going to sleep. Because every time he did, he saw things he wasn't supposed to see. Not dreams, memories, but not his memories. He stood in endless darkness. Not afraid, not lost, watching. Stars formed in front of him. Worlds took shape. Reality itself bent and reshaped like clay in invisible hands. His hands. He woke up instantly, breathing uneven, sweat dripping down his face. That wasn't a dream, because he didn't imagine it. He remembered it. At UA, everything felt smaller now. Not physically, existentially. Walls felt fragile. Air felt thin. People felt temporary. He hated that feeling. He didn't want to see the world like this. He didn't want to be above it. He just wanted to belong. But something inside him refused to forget the truth. During training, something unexpected happened. Aizawa activated his quirk. His red eyes locked onto Izuku. Erasure. The quirk that erased quirks. The perfect counter. The perfect test. Nothing happened. Izuku blinked. Aizawa's eyes widened. Impossible. He pushed harder. Focused more. Tried again. Still nothing. Because there was nothing to erase. Izuku didn't have a quirk. He was something else entirely. Aizawa lowered his gaze slowly. It's Midoriya. For the first time. His voice held uncertainty. That night, the presence returned. Stronger. Closer. Not watching anymore. Speaking. Not in words. In understanding. You are awake. Izuku froze. What am I? Silent. Then. Truth. You are not bound by this reality. You never were. His hands trembled. Then why am I here? The answer came instantly. Because you chose to be. His heart stopped. Chose. He didn't remember choosing. But deep down, it felt true. Like this life, this weakness, this struggle, had been intentional. A limitation he placed on himself. To experience humanity. To understand existence from below. Instead of above. The next morning, Izuku walked through UA. Students talked. Laughed. Lived. Unaware. Unaware of what stood beside them. Not a future hero. Not a future symbol. Something far greater. Something infinite pretending to be finite. Bakugo watched him from across the room. Deku. Izuku turned. For a moment, Bakugo felt it. Not power. Not pressure. Authority. Absolute. Unavoidable. Unquestionable. Bakugo's instincts screamed at him. Not to fight. Not to challenge. To submit. He clenched his fists harder. Refusing. But for the first time in his life. He wasn't sure he could win. Izuku stepped outside alone. Looking at the sky. Clouds moved slowly. Peacefully. Normally. But he knew the truth now. They weren't moving freely. They were allowed to move. Everything was allowed. Everything existed. Because he existed. And somewhere deep inside him, the seal that had held him back his entire life finally began to break. Izuku didn't tell anyone. Not All Might. Not Aizawa. Not even himself. Because saying it out loud would make it real. And if it was real, then nothing in his life had ever been normal. The next few days passed in silence. But inside him, something was changing. Not growing. Not evolving. Returning. He could feel it in small moments. When he walked, the wind adjusted around him. When he focused, sound faded. When he thought, reality listened. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Patiently. Waiting for his command. Then it happened. The moment everything shifted. During combat training, a robot malfunctioned. It didn't stop. It didn't obey commands. It charged directly toward Ochako. Fast, violent, unstoppable. She froze, fear locking her body in place. Everyone shouted, "Move! But she couldn't. The robot was too close. Too fast. Too late. Izuku stepped forward. Not running. Not panicking. Walking. Calm. Certain. Because deep down, he already knew the outcome. He raised his hand slightly. Not attacking. Not defending. Allowing. The robot stopped. Mid-motion. Frozen. Reality itself hesitated. The entire training field fell silent. No explosions. No voices. No sound. Only him. Standing at the center of existence. For the first time, he didn't suppress it. He didn't deny it. He accepted it. Stop. Reality obeyed. The robot collapsed instantly. Not broken. Not destroyed. Permitted to fall. Ochako stared at him. Bakugo stared at him. Aizawa stared at him. All Might, watching from afar, felt something he had never felt before. Not fear. Not danger. Truth. Izuku looked at his hand. It wasn't shaking anymore. It wasn't weak. It wasn't human. It was absolute. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of it. Because he finally understood. He wasn't given power. He was power. He wasn't born into reality. Reality was born around him. And the reason he had been weak, the reason he had been quirkless, the reason he had been normal, was because he chose to forget. But now, he was remembering. And once he remembered everything, nothing would ever be the same again. Because the strongest being in existence had just begun to wake up. That's it for part 1. If this fanfic reaches 30 likes, part 2 will be released. Comment your theories below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Fiction Flux.